Phoenix Lady here. Welcome to part 2 of the introduction to my Living the Delphian Way video log. After I graduated from high school, we moved to Montana. My father had finally gotten a PhD in education because he got tired of teaching bratty 7th graders and thought he'd do better dealing with not so bratty college kids. He managed to get a position as a professor of education at Western Montana College in Dillon, Montana. He really wanted me to be a teacher. That was the last thing I wanted, but I couldn't even begin to explain to myself, let alone him, what I did want. Still, why would I, with a 50% hearing loss, a professor for a father, and a psychologist for a mother, ever want to be a teacher in a classroom full of screaming brats? My father was terribly disappointed when I dropped out after my first year, then fell in love with the man I later married. We married in 1972. Our honeymoon was a move from Montana to Michigan. I don't think my father ever forgave me for marrying beneath me, although he must have accepted it eventually. I could never get him to understand that I didn't marry my husband because he was my equal in intelligence. I married him because he was willing to accept me, weird polymath that I am, as worthy to be loved. And sharing a love for Star Trek certainly didn't hurt. I loved him through almost 45 years of marriage and remember him with great love and respect for all I learned from him about life and dealing with reality. I look forward to loving him again in the tachyon side of reality, beyond the circles of time we live in here on the tardyon side. During the 11 years we lived in Michigan, we saw and dealt with the consequences of the riots of the late 60s, though only around the edges, as we lived in what was known as the downriver area south of the city itself. For the most part, I remember those years with fondness. Halfway through our years there, I read Gerard O'Neill's book, The High Frontier, about how we could settle space relatively easily if we chose to do so. This, I felt, was reality's way of kicking me in the butt to stop mumbling, grumbling, bitching, and complaining about Jimmy Carter's Millet speech and do something to prove him wrong. But what could a wannabe writer do that would be valuable enough to allow me to move to one of the Stanford Torrey or Bernal spheres I expected to be built within 25 years? Learn how to fix computers. I shocked my father into falling out of his chair by asking for his financial help to go to Control Data Institute and get a certificate in computer technology. I graduated a year later with the highest score up until that time and got a job as, so my manager later told me, one of maybe 50 women customer engineers in the country at the time. This was 1980, and Reagan was about to be elected. At the same time, the consequences of Nixon taking us off the gold standard, the oil embargo, stagflation, and the sharp rise in interest rates to put the brakes on the inflation put the entire Detroit area into a world of hurt. My husband's employer got bought out, so he lost his job. He went to CDI after me, but while much slower than me in going through the certificate in computer programming course, he still graduated with almost as high a score as I did. All this happened as the second dip of the recession in 1983 killed Detroit again. In my case, the Apple IIe and the IBM PC killed the business graphics system I was supporting, so I lost my job as well. We joined all those leaving Michigan with bumper stickers asking the last person out to please turn out the lights. We spent the next 4 years back in Montana trying to make a small business called Montana High Tech work. I had to learn bookkeeping out of a book. Then I had to figure out how to make a Radio Shack color computer with 16K of RAM and a cassette tape for storage, print receipts. All this while helping my husband manage a business with no experience. It's an absolute wonder we kept MHT going for almost 4 years in a small cow town. Yes, they had cattle drives twice a year down Main Street in front of our store. But it all fell apart when the town lost the lumber mill and the price of cattle fell too low to keep the ranchers in business. There were more cattle than people in that county, which was larger than the state of Delaware. If the ranchers couldn't pay their mortgages and operating expenses, they sure couldn't afford to buy computers from us. I'll be back in the next video to continue my tale. Phoenix Lady out.